And we're here with Connor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and you've been killing it everywhere. You've been covering Red Sox games, obviously the Patriots last week, but you've been at the Red Sox home games. You were there for the crazy game 3 with the walk-off home run. You offered to buy dunks for everybody on Twitter. How nice are you?
I tried to do something to lighten the mood. I think the mood was a little bit dour going into the 12th, 13th inning. And what do you know? Fire off that tweet, get some good responses, some good interaction, good content, good vibes. Christian Vasquez hits a home run like 10 minutes later. So it shows you, as many people say Twitter's a cesspool. Sometimes you can get some positives out of that. Not saying I'm taking credit for it, but I kind of am. So happy to be here, back to be covering hockey for a while. We don't know how Game 4 is going down. I will not be at Game 4, so if they happen to lose and you guys listen to this, it might be my fault for not being there. So apologies in advance. And if they
Yeah.
do win, then I'm inconsequential, which I'll take too.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the aspect of like Twitter not being such a cesspool in those moments. It is true. I feel like when everyone's watching the same game and it's a big deal and everyone's kind of very invested in it, it's kind of like we're all in it together in a way. Everyone's kind of just hanging out. Whereas it's more a cesspool in the other moments. And also things went well in that situation. I imagine if the Red
Yes.
Sox lost, it would be a
And
very
then I
different.
then then I fired off that tweet. Yeah, I would probably not be getting. I would not. I'd be getting quite a few PG-13 related responses. I think
Yeah, it's
not
funny.
for the children.
Yeah, no, not for the children at all. It's funny. I had a tweet about Nick Pivetta and Patrice Bergeron both being number 37, and I actually got some Lightning fans replying to it, being like, "Bergeron sucks. He's overrated. What has he done?" And I was like, "Wait, there are people who like don't like Patrice Bergeron. Like, obviously, we know that people like hate Brad Marchand, and people think different things about players. Ironically, Rask is the only Bruin who is the fans don't like more
Yes.
than opposing fans. But to hear like Bergeron, you think Bergeron's overrated?
Yeah.
Really? I was just kind of
I feel like
shocked
that's
by
like
that.
I feel like that's like Yankees, like that whole rivalry. It's not like Red Sox fans are going out of the way. You'd boo him obviously because he's on the Yankees, but like people had beef with like Mariano Rivera, right? Like I feel
No.
like when I'm against him, like, oh shit, this guy's really good. Like I'm not
Yeah.
gonna like it because you're on the Yankees, but like you're not like going after a guy.
No, the only Yankee was really A-Rod and some others along the way, your Nick Swishers of the world. And even with this Yankees
Posada.
yeah,
Posada's
Posada. With this Yankees team though, like Aaron Judge seems like a good dude. He seems nice, not a bad guy. Um, but yeah, but Bergeron's the epitome of like a good dude, a great guy, a legend. That overrated. I was like, what? Really? Like I try to zoom out, and I was just very surprised by that. But anyways, on this episode, the season begins, Connor, on Saturday. Bruins Stars home opener, the Tyler Seguin reunion, um, to open the season. What a world! But they will open at TD Garden, and I figure Poke the Bear will kind of do our predictions on. We'll do our leading goal scorer and MVP and what we think of certain things. But I wanted to get the people's questions. What were people wondering about? And actually, ironically enough, all of the I think we just both got the same tweet notification.
Yep.
I will let you look at
Breaking
this as
news:
I will maybe this is the breaking news we've always been looking for of the
the
initial roster for the
Bruins. The Bruins
2021
have
season.
announced their initial roster, and Jack Sneak is not on it.
He is not on it, unless it's a typo, but he is not on it.
It's like when they forgot. That should have been like the writing on the wall. Like the poor Bruins forgot. Uh,
John
they
Moore.
forgot John Moore. I was like, oh Jesus Christ. But
Oh, poor
as
guy.
I sort through this real quick, let me just make sure I'm not forgetting Jack Stanika.
Well, I will
He
say
is
this.
not on the initial roster. No.
He is not. Anton Bleed is on the initial roster. Curtis Lazar is an asterisk next to his name because injured reserve. Um, and then we have Jakob Zaboral on here as well on D. So John Moore's on the roster. There's John Moore. So John Moore went through
There you go.
waivers, but he's
They unless like what if it was like they did the typo by accident and like now he's included, but
yeah, like
it's
oh
been
we meant to write Urho Vakanainen. We
yeah.
wrote John Moore instead. Whoops.
But as a
Um,
whole, I mean, yeah, no Stanika, which I'm sure people will be less than thrilled about, but surprising, not really. I think we saw the writing on the wall
no,
with that too.
no. So yeah, Carson Kuhlman's on this list as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any. I mean, yes, Nika's the big one, obviously. But so, anyways, that's the roster. I don't think there's anything crazy to react to, and we can react to certain things among the questions. I just lost my tweet of all the questions, but anyways, they're all topical questions of what matters and things that are going to be big going into the season. By the way, we've always looked for breaking news on this podcast to drop in the middle, and that was like a 5.5 out of 10 on the breaking news scale. It wasn't a trade, it wasn't a signing, it wasn't anybody severely injured, but it was legit. It was the roster for the season. So
I'm sure that video was great of both of us just immediately going like,
well, I was already looking at Twitter.
Yeah.
I was looking at Twitter and I saw that and I was like, wait a second. I'm going to keep talking so he can look at it. Anyways, so we'll start with Mark Allred, good friend Mark Allred over at Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. Make sure to go listen to them. They are great. He asks, if the Charlie Coyle experiment fails on the second line and he's moved back to the third line, do you guys think the next man up should be a fast, creative player like Erik Haula, at least for a look-see? Thanks, gentlemen, and keep up the amazing work. Thank you, Mark. That's an interesting point because I feel like we always consider Stanika to be the guy that would go in for Coyle if things don't work out. And I still think that's the case because I like Erik Haula on that third line. But Mark brings up a good point in the sense that, if Coyle is to go down to that third line, is he going to play the wing? Like, you're not going to put Haula on the fourth line.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a couple of different factors that play into that if you're looking at what the right fit is. And if, let's say, Coyle doesn't work out there, what the next move is. I think the Bruins have to weigh one, how Erik Haula is doing. If Erik Haula is down on the third line with this group that we didn't really know going into the preseason what kind of offensive production you're going to get. If Erik Haula 2 weeks in has, 6-7 points, the third line is playing very well, then you're like, all right, well, if he's playing well with Jake DeBrusk and Nick Foligno, maybe he gets the first look up there. But that being said, I think maybe the safer option, at least in the short term, is, I mean, as we already now know that Jack Stanika is not in the lineup. He's going to get his reps, top 6 reps down in Providence. And from what everything Bruce Cassidy has said between how impressed he was with Stanika's game preseason, adhering to the smaller details, mentioning, especially I think the last couple of practices, the fact that as much as you could put Stanika on the fourth line, they want to, one, keep him in the middle, and two, they envision him in a top 9 role. So if you have an opening there in that 2C spot where Coyle's not working out, at that point, do you just give Stanika a test run? Like, he's got the high-end skill that you put him with 2 guys in Taylor Hall and Craig Smith. You could get something there. If you want a guy to succeed, what better way to do that than put him on a platform where he's with 2 guys, especially a guy in Hall who can really be the driver of that line, right? Like, it's not like it's all incumbent on Jack Stanika to generate that offense on his own. So I think if Coyle gets bumped down, it'll depend on how Haula does in that spot, but how he's doing in the third line, rather. But I would say it's Stanika, that what better chance you have to at least see what you have, even if it's a 3, 4, 5 game sample, than to put him in that spot and see if he can run with it. Because sooner or later, you got to find out what you have in a guy like him, right?
Yeah, and I also think if that Coyle experiment fails, my guess is you're not doing super hot in the standings either.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, trying out Stanika on that line makes sense. And again, if that fails, if he after 5 or 6 games doesn't work, Haula probably is that next guy up. Another guy is Foligno. Nick Foligno is another person who could see time up on that line. Gets me to my next question from John Simmons Jr. He says, how much of our season's success depends on Charlie Coyle guiding the second line? Now, I just kind of alluded to that, but I think a lot, actually. I don't think this is like a small issue. It's not like Jake DeBrusk on the third line left wing spot. Like, this is your top 6. And this is Taylor Hall on your left and Craig Smith on your right. This is kind of replacing Krejci in a sense. I think the expectations for Coyle are pretty high among everybody. I mean, I think we've kind of put it around 40 to 50 points, but in his career, that's not been a very easily attainable thing. Do you think that if they are going to make the playoffs, can Charlie Coyle struggle?
I don't think so, unless Taylor Hall just goes, sicko mode and becomes the top play driver, which who knows, maybe he will, because and Taylor Hall looked very, very good this preseason in terms of just generating offense, of making it easy, controlling the puck, There's only one game, obviously, that Coyle played with Hall, but they seem like they read off each other very well. We kind of alluded to this during our last podcast that maybe having a puck dominant winger, a great passer like Hall, with a guy like Coyle could get the most out of Coyle, where, you know, kind of like with Johansson when he was on that line with Coyle, where it opened up Coyle to kind of get to the net more, to score more goals, get more involved in the offense, which can get him going. So, but yeah, if Coyle doesn't work out there and you're struggling to find a solution, you kind of go down the rabbit hole and it starts a whole domino effect of, all right, are we then placing all of our hopes on Jack Stanika to be this guy who puts up 40 points, which we don't know what they have in him. It could work out, but it's a lot to ask for a young player in that role like that. Is Erik Haula your 2C? I don't think going into this year you're expecting him to be that, right? Like that's not what a Stanley Cup caliber team is probably rolling out as a second line centerman is Erik Haula. No disrespect to him, but if you want to maximize the rest of the firepower you have to imagine someone else. So if Coyle doesn't work out, does it doom the Bruins? No, but it makes it that much harder, right? Maybe you then have to go into the trade deadline and go fishing for a guy like Thomas Hertl, which we've talked about it before, makes plenty of sense, but I'm sure the Bruins would rather, all things being equal, not give up an absurd amount of assets, draft capital, once again, for a guy like Hertl if Coyle is playing with a 50, 60 point pace, right? Like, Thomas Hertl is a great player. Would the Bruins love to have him? Yes, but I think the vying for his services, the cost is going to be crazy because I think there's going to be a lot of teams going after a top 6 guy of his caliber who's impending UFA. Like, Bruins could be right in the mix, but man, if they get him, that's going to be a haul of a return to get him. So is it going to doom the Bruins if Coyle doesn't work out? No, but it's going to make it significantly hotter because you have to have another shooter drop, whether it's Hertl or someone else.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading Monday. Frank Saravalli has like 32 predictions for the season, and they were wild predictions. A lot of them were like, "Whoa!" Like he had the Hurricanes in the Stanley Cup final and all this stuff.
Bruins
But
not making the playoffs.
he had Bruins not making the playoffs either. But one thing he did have, and this is I agree with, Thomas Hertl is going to be the number 1 trade target at the deadline. So you're going to have a lot of teams vying for him. So as you said, going to be very expensive. So yeah, I don't think that they are helped if Charlie Coyle is not producing on that second line. 2 questions on Derek Forbort. Bruins fan 93 said, "What's your opinion on Derek Forbort's preseason with McAvoy on the PK, etc.?" And then Rafi Munoz said, when Forbort was playing for the Flames, he was given the nickname Sugar by Rhett Warner on Calgary Sports Radio. My question is, can you keep the nickname for him in Boston? Well, I'll start with that one. I don't know why he was called Sugar. Maybe you know. Do you know at all?
I can't say. No, I have not. I don't think anyone's asked him about that. Derek Forbort, known as being a very good teammate. Talking with the media, it's not a lot of doesn't wax poetic about some of the details of the game. So I don't know exactly where the sugar comes from, but maybe gets more more used to the media, gets on regular terms with guys. Maybe then we'll ask him. But as for the origin of that, I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the reasoning. Maybe if I did, I'd like it more. I don't love that nickname. Just it doesn't really. There's no point to it. Like if he did something funny, with it, like if you like Curtis Lazar, if you called him, well, he had a hamburger off the ice, right? That was what it
Yes,
was.
yes.
If you called him like hamburger or something, that might make sense. But sugar, doesn't roll off the tongue. I feel like we probably need to come up with a new nickname for Derek Forbort. Maybe his teammates call him like Forbes, because
That's what I
Forbort.
think the safe bet is. Yeah,
That's
that
that's
is.
a safe bet. But yeah, I won't be keeping that up unless there's like I know the reason behind it. Then we can do it.
I'll probably call him Derek. That's probably
Ooh, that's a good point. Or
yeah.
like D, because D is the first letter in Derek. But why would you? Hey D, you'd be like, what? Who are you?
Yeah.
Who are
I'm
you
good.
again?
Yeah.
All right, so back to Bruins fan 93's question. What's your opinion on Derek Forbort's preseason? I didn't mind it. I thought he was good. Fit in well. I feel like Forbort's one of those guys who you almost don't want to notice. You used to. This is a tough comparison because he's nowhere near as good as Forbort, but Jakub Zboril. You used to say last year, if he can be like a lineman, you just don't. If you don't notice him, it's a good thing. I feel like Forbort's game is you don't want to notice him, and I noticed him for some good things for sure, but he was good defensively. in those preseason games. You look to fit in well. What do you think? What did you think of his game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was as advertised as what he is, and I think you have to keep expectations in check, which I think Bruins fans are doing. I don't think people think this guy is going to slot in with, Charlie McAvoy to open the year. He's going to be like this Dennis Seidenberg, like shutdown guy that was the perfect role, on the top pairing. I don't think, people are expecting that. I don't think probably Bruins fans still have a full barometer or gauge of what kind of player he is, but again, as advertised as to what he brings to this group, a shutdown presence, a guy who can help out on the PK. Him and Kahlo together, had some good, some bad. I think there's going to be some patience prescribed for a guy like him, especially I think I think he was more man to man, I want to say, in Winnipeg, and for some players, I think John Moore talked about this when he first joined the Bruins. There's some adjustment to get used to the Bruins system, which is more zone. So obviously, need to have some patience there to see how he adjusts. But no, he's been solid for what he is. Again, he's not going to be a flashy guy, as you said. Is he going to be with Coyle all year? Not Coyle, McAvoy all year round. Yeah, that'd be wild.
Forward on the left wing.
Something would have to go drastically wrong if Derek Forbort was on the second line. But
it's like when Connor Clifton plays on the fourth line.
Yeah, we'll get those probably like later, probably a month into the season. But you look at the fact that how Forbort fits in. Is he going to be with McAvoy the whole year? Probably not. I still think that's going to be a situational thing where it's going to be, protecting a lead. He'll be with McAvoy, but then if the Bruins are chasing the game or what have you, then you have a lot of Grizzlies. So I think it's going to be pretty fluid in that regard. So we'll see how, let's say, Forbort is with Clifton, what have you. We'll see how that, what plays out from that. But let's be frank. If you're with Charlie McAvoy, you're probably going to have a pretty good pair.
Oh yeah, no, and that's why I think he can hold his own on that pairing, and it's going to be interesting to see how those two do for 10, 15 games at a time to begin the year. Okay, back to some questions. Andrew Taverna, always a great guy. Could follow on Twitter, and does great work with Mark over at blackandgoldhockeypod.com. Serious question: do the Bruins have the solution to their secondary scoring issues with the additions in the bottom six? Other serious question: does Conor ever go to a Dunks and carve his name with a heart around it into their sign? I've seen you do that many times.
Yeah, I don't know how Andrew found out about that. Actually, I guess the secret's out. I guess people have been reporting it now. I don't even know that you knew that. So, I guess I'll have to stop, or I'll have to find some new Dunkins to frequent so I don't get called out for it. But what are you gonna do? I love Duncan. What am I to do? What am I to do,
Yeah.
Evan, as I walk in?
Nothing you can do. You just
Order a coffee like a regular person? No, come on.
Can't do that. Gotta go with the stick, and like really dig it in there. Winnie _1924 also asked something similar. Do you think that the arrivals, or do you think that with the arrivals this season, the Bruins have alleviated the offensive problem of the third and fourth line? So I'll answer them together. I think yes, I do. I think that's what they spent the money on in free agency. And when you really boil it down, that's what free agency is for. Free agency is not to find your future number one or number two center. It's not to find the pillar of your organization. It's to load up on depth. That's like, I think what free agency has become in every sport. I mean, we can go down baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. Like this, that's, you get depth. Nick Foligno, Thomas Nosek, Erik Haula. Like those are half of your bottom six. Yeah, I think 100%. And I think that, when you have those guys, you're going to see a lot better of a fourth line than you had last year for sure. I think you're going to see a lot better of a third line because you also have, you have the presence of Foligno and Haula with DeBrusk, who this is last chance really. So yeah, I absolutely think that when it comes to bottom six scoring, I think it's going to be a totally different picture than it was last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's encouraging. I think especially that third line, the early returns look very good. I think people have been very impressed by Erik Haula and, good two-way player. The pace he's been playing with, which I think really benefits DeBrusk, which I think is going to be huge for getting DeBrusk to bounce back from last season. He's been solid. Foligno, I don't think he's going to be a guy that gets you 15, 20 goals, but I think he does the little things. Maybe they don't even count on the stat sheet that can contribute to that line, whether it's being on the forecheck, making space down low. Like I think he's going to definitely contribute to that line and help out quite a bit. Not counting also his impact in the room, which I don't think you found an NHL player that has a bad thing to say about Nick Foligno, which for a Bruins team that places so much importance on team culture and guys like that, having them here, I think means a lot. So I think they're going to be very solid. I was impressed with Nosek in the preseason. Plays with pace, crashed into the net like 10 times. So a lot of high danger scoring chances if Thomas Nosek's out there. I will say, like, I think the third line, intrigued and encouraged by, because I also think even if you had some of the regular cast of characters back from last year, I still think DeBrus was going to be better. I think just the basic regression to the mean had him bouncing back regardless. But I think with Haula, you could have a pretty potent line, especially for a third line there. Fourth line, I think we have to kind of see where the pieces fall into place. Again, I think Nosek's very good, but it's almost like you're replacing, you know, the Corrali that you had from a few years ago, a great guy who can generate chances on the fourth line, but you also need a good supporting cast around him. And I think we still have to see how the Bruins fill in those holes because, right now, obviously Curtis Lazar is hurt, which is unfortunate because I thought he really kind of picked up his play down the stretch of the preseason. But you're looking at Trent Frederick to start the year. Makes sense, but he needs to show a whole lot more. I think going into this preseason, we were expecting for a guy to play the same sandpaper kind of game that we're used to seeing from Frederick, but also take the next step forward, right? Expand on his offense, be a little bit more assertive in the offensive zone. We've talked about it a bunch of times. Not expecting 20 goals from the guy, but pot a few more goals, contribute on the score sheet. And it seemed like kind of took 2 steps back. I don't know if it was thinking about just being, overly physical too much or what have you, but just needs to get back to playing his game. Bruce Cassidy mentioned that he doesn't want Frederick to go out there on every shift and be like, all right, who's the biggest guy to punch in the face? It's about creating that kind of stuff organically of, being involved in a puck battle, getting into some post whistle scrums after, fighting for a puck down low. Those things that lead to him being the pest that teams hate to play against as opposed to just going around chirping guys, right? So we'll see how the rest of that fourth line shakes out. Who knows? We could be looking a month into the year, and whether it's a guy like Lauko who's maybe playing well in Providence or what have you. There's other guys that can step into that role. So fourth line, I think, is more of a work in progress. But with Nosek down there, at least having some stability plus that third line, is it a foregone conclusion that Haula's going to be a 40-point guy, the rest are going to score 20 goals? No. But I think you have to be encouraged with what you can get out of that group, especially considering the personnel you had the last couple of years in that spot.
Yeah, again, and I also think you mentioned it with Frederick. Like, that's the guy to watch. I think that's kind of he either puts you over the top with that fourth line or kind of makes that fourth line somewhat irrelevant. We know Nosek's going to be pretty good. When Lazar returns, he should be pretty good. So yeah, I think that fourth line again, and you mentioned Lauko too. That'd be very interesting to have him on that fourth line because that's a guy who could potentially be a top 9, top 6 winger for you down the line. Obviously, with Frederick comes some concerns. And at Paul S. Bannister on Twitter asks, what is the most concerning element of the team heading into the season? Most concerning thing. Now, Connor, I will ask you, what is the most concerning thing in your eyes?
I mean,
I have mine, but I want to hear yours first because I think it might be different. If you have something, if you want me to go first, I will gladly go first.
You know what? I'm gonna go with. I'm slightly concerned about the defense in terms of how it's going to. I think it's very intriguing. I think we've talked about it before that. Well, maybe that left side with Forbort and Grzelcyk and Riley wasn't what we planned out to start the off season. Right? We were talking about Alexiak and Martinez and those guys, or Matthias Ekholm, stuff like that. I think there's a potential for them to be very effective, especially in terms of the puck movement transition. It's definitely not the standard kind of roster construction you see from teams in terms of building out their defense the way the Bruins are constructed. But what concerns me is that as great as they look, right now to start the year, what happens when we get into the dog days of January and February and guys have banged up? I think you're an injury away from obviously McAvoy. That one's the obvious one. McAvoy's gone for a extended time. No shit, right? But like even let's say Kahlo or let's say Riley or one of those guys, like the depth on the defense in terms of guys who can step in for 10-game sample size, what have you. I think that's a concern, and just the fact that stuff can unravel pretty quickly if injuries pile up there, which it's hockey, it's 82 games. Kind of have to expect that to
Gonna
happen at
happen.
some point, right?
Yeah, it's funny. You also mentioned, or well, you mentioned the defense. Someone else, Christopher McKenzie on Twitter, said, "Would you rather have Linus Olmark or Linus Van Pelt, which is Snoopy, in goal right now?" That's a valid. That's a
Linus.
valid.
That is the actual Linus, right? That's how
Oh
they
yeah,
actually
Linus,
say.
not Linus. My God, I can't
Very
pronounce things.
that's a worldly version of Peanuts.
Yes. So that's another thing that people are worried about. Linus Olmark, being in net, making $5 million a year. Look really not good in the preseason. So that's one thing. I will say my most concerning thing this year for this team: who is the free agent at the end of this year who is older and is pondering his future a little bit? And that's Patrice Bergeron.
Mostly
Now, I'm
Curtis
not
Lazar.
concerned. Yeah, Curtis Lazar. What will Curtis Lazar do? But there's, he's been around for so long. He's played since 2004, or is it 03? I think it was 03, right? That was his first year. 03 was his first year, which is a long time now. He's going to be 36, or no, he is 36. He'll be 37 at the end of the year, I believe. Taking it, he's going to see how he feels this year. Now, I think Bergeron's going to be fine production wise, but if he gets hurt, if he gets injured, and he's dealt with lingering things for a while, does he just say, "I'm going to hang him up after the end of this year"? Like, I think one of the things you have to be concerned about is you don't want him to get injured, because that could impact his decision on whether or not he stays. I don't think he's going anywhere else. I think it's either retirement or a 2-year deal, which is what I think the Bruins would love. So it's not super pressing now, but I think if he is dealing with injuries and dealing with lingering things, that's an issue, because that's going to impact him coming back. And then you go into the whole idea of who the hell plays for you on your first line for center, because that is a question you can't answer right now. So that is my biggest concern. I mean, obviously goaltending can kind of be a thing. So let's get into bigger picture stuff. Will Highland asks, aside from Tampa and Toronto, who's the bigger threat? Carolina, Montreal, or Florida? I think out of those three teams, it's Florida, and I don't think it's close. And I will say why. Because Carolina's not in the same division. And I think Carolina got worse. Frank Saravalli, we mentioned the predictions earlier. He actually put them in the cup. I think I mentioned that earlier. He put them in the cup. I don't really understand that. But Florida, to me, is the big threat out of there. By the way, just re-signed Barkov. So there goes another guy who could potentially replace Patrice Bergeron.
Another reason to go to Insta, yeah, because you're already on Fanatics.com with the jersey maker putting Barkov on a Bruins sweater. It's not happening.
Not happening anymore. So would you agree that Florida is the team out of those three that's the big threat?
Yeah, no, I think they're very, very legit. I think obviously Carolina, you said, not in the same division. I think they're still going to be good, but I don't know, you got rid of your goalie who very well could have made another run for probably the Calder because he was rookie eligible this year. You gave him away because you didn't want to pay up for him, which good job, guys.
Nice guys.
You lose Dougie Hamilton. You've, again, talented team. I think Brendan was a fantastic coach. They got a good thing going down there, but I don't really see how they take the next big step when you make moves like that. But again, that's why I don't do the podcasting for the Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll see. They'll be in the mix, but Florida looks legit, man. Especially, I think the biggest determinant is if Spencer Knight takes the step forward that I think a lot of people think he will do. Because let's say he struggles and it goes to Sergei Bobrovsky, who signed that dipshit deal that Florida handed him, a few summers ago, which I can't comprehend again why they did that. But if Spencer Knight is as legit as people think he is, and you look at the team around him with how deep their forward core is, Ekblad's coming back. Mackenzie Weegar might have now supplanted Jacob Slavin as the most underrated defenseman in the league category. And Weegar's legit, man. They've got a lot of great players. Top six is great. Even guys, depth scoring is solid. Well coached with Quenneville. They're a legit team, man. They're gonna be right in the mix. If you had them even being better than finishing first in the Atlantic, would not surprise me. I think we'll see what happens when you get to the postseason. I feel like Tampa is another one that just turns it on, but Florida top to bottom looks pretty legit.
Yeah, I feel like that grouping of underrated defensemen of Slavin, Uyghur, and then Jacob Chikrin from
Mhm.
Arizona. It's like those three guys are so good, but just they don't put up a billion points, so people don't really give them the attention they deserve. Another thing about Carolina, Frederick Anderson. You want to get past the Bruins, but you pick the goalie who has the toughest time getting past the Bruins of anybody in the league. So enjoy that. So
And
yeah,
and and then meanwhile, Toronto is solving their problems by getting Peter Mrazek, right? Who does
who's like
not
the
have great
second worst
numbers.
goalie
Yeah, who
against the
does not have
Bruins.
great numbers against the Bruins in the playoffs either. So
just making it easier and easier for the Bruins. But yeah, Florida's ridiculous. I think they're legit. And as you said, who knows come playoff time, but you got to get in the playoffs. And I think with this division, it's not going to be very easy to do so. Reg Schofield, a longtime supporter of us, asks, in the ranking of true contenders, as the Bruins are right now, what place would you say they are at? Now, this is interesting because John Lasissen's model in The Athletic has the Bruins, I believe, top five. I think it was fifth he had them at,
yeah,
which
yep.
I think is high. I think it's very high. I would say they're between like 7 and 10. I would say set between 7 and 10 is where I would rank them now. Depends on how the season starts. Again, if Coyle comes out buzzing and that second line looks like it did in that last preseason game, then maybe they're top five. But for me, just at a quick glance, they're 7 to 10 in my book.
I think they're in that 5 to 7 range, man. I think like I'd rather do it like in terms of tiers. I think there's like a clear cup favorite tier where it's, I mean, Avalanche,
Mm-hmm.
probably Tampa again, even though they lost guys, that team's still stacked.
Yeah.
Vegas, maybe put those three, and
Mm-hmm.
then like there's the Boston's, Toronto. There's probably people who think Toronto might be in that other tier, but we'll see what happens. I do like some of the moves that Toronto made, like Bunting. I think is going to be a great pickup for them, but it's still
Kasha
Toronto.
could be. Kasha could be.
Yeah, they're still Toronto, so who knows what happens? But I do like some of the moves they made. But I think Boston's in that second tier, like contenders. We'll see how it goes. Like the Bruins could very well like it could be a house of cards and it all comes falling apart where guys get injured or Olmark doesn't play well and we're scrambling in November, or the pieces could all fall into place right away and it works out perfectly. Like Haula's buzzing on that third line. Coyle looks great. Hall looks like the Hall from the New Jersey Devil days. Like Swayman is contending for a Calder. It can go multiple different directions. So we'll see how it plays out for the Bruins. I still think they're going to be right in the mix. Like I think they're at the head of the pack in terms of that second tier, but there's teams in front of them that look pretty horrifying. I mean, dude, like Colorado, Vegas, Tampa again, like there are some stacked teams in front of them that again, so the good thing about hockey that you can be as excited or as hyped up looking at how stacked some of these lineups are and doesn't mean much. I mean, people didn't think Avalanche were going to steamroll through teams to get to the Stanley Cup, and it was Montreal and Tampa as we all expected, right? So a lot can change, but I think the fact the Bruins are just in that second tier falls in line with I think what most of us are expecting. I don't think any of us are expecting them to miss the playoffs, and I think there still should be optimism of how this team is. Like they've still got the expected production you're going to get, plus so many guys that are due for a bounce back season just based on just the regular regression metrics of DeBrusk and Coyle and what have you. So, well, to be excited about, but favorites, I don't think you can say that going into the year.
No, also you have the Islanders too, who are a good
Yeah,
team and
yeah.
who running it back. So that's another team I'd probably put above
That
them.
I might put them in that top tier as well because that team
They're due.
was they and every time they may not be the flashiest lineup. Analytics don't always like favor them as much, but every year they put together a great run. They've got really balanced team, and they got even just having Anders Lee back and healthy is huge for that team.
Huge. So yeah, I would put them there. I'm very interested in what the Metro ends up being like. Like, are the Flyers going to be good? Like, what's the Penguins going to be like without Crosby for a while? The Capitals too. Like, are they too old now? So that's the Metro. I'm very interested in. I think that division could either suck or be pretty good. But yeah, I'd still put the Bruins that 7 to 10 category. A little skeptical of losing Krejci and Rask, so we'll see. We will see. Juso Kakinen. Juso Kakinen. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, my apologies. He asked, which player surprised you positively during the preseason? Connor, what would be your pick for the player that surprised you the most?
I would say Haula. I think he was a guy that going into it, we expected he wasn't going to be the guy that he was that first year in Vegas, where what he had almost 30 goals. Like, and I still think that you're not going to get that, right? Like, you're not going to get that Erik Haula. But the way he plays, how the pace that he dictates on that line, crafty player. We saw that off of that bank pass that led to that Pasternak goal. Good two-way player. He's been what we expected, if not maybe more, in terms of just how active he is and how much of a jump he brings to that third line. So, is he going to be a 30-goal scorer? No, but could he be a third line, key cog that gets you 40 points? I think so. And as much as maybe 40 points isn't going to, shake the foundations or like this crazy, breakthrough season, 40 points on that third line, considering where it was a year ago, would be huge for this team.
Yeah, and it goes along with what I've been saying the whole time. Like, you're not going to replace the points with with Coyle directly that you lost with Krejci, but you'll make up for it with more points from the third and fourth lines. I'll go easy on this one. I think Stanika. Again, you wanted Stanika to have a good preseason. He had the best preseason he could possibly have. I think there just isn't a spot for him in the lineup. But again, it wasn't like he didn't get a spot in the lineup because he was bad. He was as good as can be. He's the best player in the preseason probably for them. But at the end of the day, there just wasn't a spot for him in the lineup, at least yet. We'll see what happens with injuries and such. Another one, obviously, Swayman. Swayman was ridiculous in the preseason, and that's what you wanted to see out of him. Like you want to be like, okay, this wasn't a flash in the pan last year. This guy's actually good, and that's what they got. We'll end with a question from the Hellhammer. The Hellhammer on Twitter asks, if you and Conor had to marry a Bruins player for life, no divorces, who would it be and why? Now, we are not going to answer this question.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Greg Zanon. Brett
that was my submission.
Greg Zanon. You took mine right out of my mouth. Derek Morris. No. If we will not answer from that perspective, we will instead do a more relatable one as of if we had daughters, who would we want them to marry on the Bruins? Who would we want the Bruin that they would marry to be? And I think the obvious answer is Patrice Bergeron, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, dude.
Duh. Damn, that's my answer. So Bergeron's the obvious one for like every reason imaginable. He's a great guy, and like he's a great guy. Like I think that's easy to tell. Another one would be like Brandon Carlo. I feel like Brandon Carlo is a really good dude, great guy. I'd have no problem with my daughter marrying him. Seems like a good family man. The picture of him in the North End with the the baby carriage, he seems like a good guy. So, do you have any others that pop off the page of guys you'd love your daughters with?
Yeah, I already said, dude. Greg Zanon. Yeah, rugged outdoorsman. Yeah, of course.
Greg Zanon. There it is.
I've been saying it all along.
This is your chance to finally say it. You finally get to put that out there. And for the people still listening, damn, what a question to end on. Anyways, that is the season preview episode for Bruins Beat. So that is everything. We answered all your questions. We'll do these more during the year. We were saying this last year of doing like live Q&As, and we never got around to it, but I think that'd be interesting this year if we did ones through YouTube and stuff. So we'll probably end up doing that. If you guys want them, let us know. And yeah, that's the season preview episode. So season starts Saturday. Conor, what can the people look forward to over at Boston Sports Journal?
Yeah, we're going to be ramping up all of our preview content. So we already dropped an NHL notebook this past weekend doing predictions for the season across the NHL. We'll do obviously a Bruins predictions, which we'll talk about later this week on Poke the Bear. But over at BSJ, we'll have predictions, we'll have previews, lineup projections, all that good stuff over at BSJ. So subscribe at bostonsportsjournal.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. And for CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.